Hey, welcome to a Saturday edition of Morning Scone. Very glad to have you as always. Please hit the red subscribe button if you've not done that yet. A lot I want to talk about here on the show this morning as the NFL draft continues and LSU baseball got a massive win yesterday. So I want to talk about the LSU guys in the draft, what the Saints did on Friday night, and then the LSU baseball game. So we'll go in that order. The story last night, really not just locally, but all over the draft, became Derrius Guice falling in the draft. Congrats to Dante Jackson, who became the first LSU Tiger off the board on Friday night for this draft. And coming off the board, Jackson went early 55 overall to Carolina. Then Derrius Guice went 4 picks later to the Washington Redskins. DJ Chark went 61st to Jacksonville. And then Arden Key went early in round 3, 87th overall by the Oakland Raiders. So it was actually late in round 3. So congrats to all the guys that got picked. Excuse me. But Guice was the story because Guice ended up being the 7th running back taken. And I got so many questions, what happened? Is there more? Is there perceived issues? And as best I can gather is that there were teams that felt that Derrius maybe wasn't accountable away from the field and maybe was aloof and marched to the beat of his own drum, those types of things. There's no one smoking gun of an incident that led teams to pass. But what ultimately happened is you had the run on running backs, as happens with positions in the draft. Of course, you had Saquon Barkley at the top. But once the running backs started coming off the board at the end of round 1 and at the start of round 2, the teams that needed running backs started taking them. You even saw Detroit trade up with New England to go up and get a running back. And ultimately, it wasn't Derrius Guice. So it's insanely disappointing, and something that hopefully it's a lesson learned for Derrius and for other young athletes is choose your representation carefully, because Derrius is represented by Lil Wayne's group, and I'm not trying to delegitimize or illegitimize Lil Wayne's agency, but the fact of the matter is he just doesn't have as much experience as other sports agents and some of those groups in dealing with situations like preparing for the draft. And if this were the scuttlebutt around the combine, that was late February. That you had 8 weeks to try to get in front of that and rectify that if that's what teams were thinking about your client, and they didn't. So it cost Derrius. So it's going to literally cost him millions on a rookie contract. But if you're looking for the silver lining, if you're a second-round pick, the team does not have a 5th option on you, and so you get to free agency 1 year sooner than if you're a first-round draft pick when the team has a 5th-year option. So if you want the example, look at Odell Beckham, who was a first-round pick, and of course the Giants picked up his 5th-year option. And you look at Jarvis Landry, who was a second-round pick, who got to free agency a year sooner. Miami elected to instead of signing Jarvis to the long-term deal, they traded Jarvis to Cleveland, and Cleveland signed him to the long-term deal. So Jarvis got his big contract while Odell has to wait another year, and a year coming off of injury as well. So if you want the positive side for Derrius, that's it. It's that he'll get to free agency a year sooner. But the disappointing part is up front. He cost himself millions of dollars, and it's really, really disappointing. As for the Saints and what they did, they stood pat at 91, their 3rd-round pick, and they used it on a wide receiver. Admittedly, man, when they took they took Traquan Smith, the wide receiver out of Central Florida, who was a really productive player at Central Florida, 6'2", 210. The interesting thing is whenever they're calling, it was Roman Harper who was announcing the pick, and when they said wide receiver Trey, and I really thought they were going to go Trey Quinn right there. As it was, Trey Quinn, former LSU Tiger, who graduated from SMU, did not get picked yesterday, but he will get picked. But 6'2", 210, big receiver, caught 59 catches for 1171 and 13 touchdowns last year for Central Florida. He was their go-to guy, 4.49 in the 40. So a big target, similar build to Michael Thomas, runs really well. So you knew the Saints were going to go wide receiver at some point, and with the injury concerns about Cam Meredith and just the productivity issues with Brandon Coleman, I mean, you feel really good about Michael Thomas and Ted Ginn making this roster. After that, it feels like everybody else has to go earn that roster spot. And here's another really talented guy that will join that mix. So I like it a lot. If there was one surprise, it was the fact that the tight end from Indiana, there was that group of the top 5 tight ends in this draft. You had Goddard, you had Hayden Hurst, you had Gesicki from Penn State, and Andrews from Oklahoma, and then the kid from Indiana would be the 5th. And when Mike Detillier was on our show, he said, look, he had all 5 of those guys graded in the 3rd round. It just, all kind of clustered together. So considering the kid from Indiana was still on the board, the Saints need a tight end. They didn't go tight end. That was a surprise. So when I look ahead for New Orleans and what they may do with the rest of the day Saturday, with the cluster of picks that they have in the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round, I'm guessing that they're going to try to find a tight end. I would not be surprised at all if they try to get an interior offensive lineman or a versatile offensive lineman, and maybe a quarterback. Kyle Lauletta is a guy that got a lot of talk. Luke Falk from Washington State. It really just depends on who's on the board when the Saints are picking. They got 5 picks here in day 3, including an extra 6th rounder. So something I just tell you to keep in mind is the Saints aren't afraid to deal, and now that they have a cluster of picks on day 3, they're not afraid to move up in the later rounds. They did it for David Onyemata. They did it years ago for Thomas Morstead. So wouldn't be surprised at all if the Saints made a move today. If there was someone still lingering that they liked a lot, that they jumped up and snagged. So day 3 of the draft is today. And we'll wrap up talking some LSU baseball. I'm not big into hyperbole. I'm just not. I don't get too much into, that's the greatest game ever, or the biggest win ever, the most disappointing thing ever. But yesterday, LSU beat Ole Miss 5-2 in Oxford. And that, to me, feels like a season-saving win, especially coming off the embarrassment of how Game 1 went. And the goal, make no mistake, the goal for LSU this weekend was to go to Oxford and get one. Get one. Like, if you can manage to win the series, put yourself in a position to win the series like they are today, they can go out and maybe play a great game and win, and that'd be fantastic, and win the series. But your goal was to get one, and they did it. And the reason that's significant is mathematically, it keeps you on pace to be a regional host. Again, being a national seed at this point is out of the window. Unless if they literally go 2008 and win every game left. I mean, if they just win every game the rest of the way, then they probably play themselves in it. But you can't bank on that. So, Kendall Rogers was on our show this week and he said 16, 17 wins would get you a national seed or a regional host site. And if you just look mathematically, LSU's at 10 wins. It means try to get to 7 more. Well, I think you can take 2 next week again against Arkansas, because Arkansas has really struggled on the road. You can absolutely sweep Bama, who's the worst team in the league. That's 5, and you can go to Auburn and get 2. That's 17, and that puts you right there before you even go to Hoover for the SEC tournament as a regional host. So that's very much doable. What's more is that's an extra win over a top 10 team. It's going to boost your RPI getting that win, and to avoid back-to-back sweeps and the optics of that for the committee is massive. So yeah, last night was hugely significant for this team. And you can start to play the what-if game and go, what if you didn't blow the Sunday game against South Carolina? Well, you did. But if you didn't blow the Sunday game against South Carolina, you're looking even better right now. Brady Feigl started for Ole Miss, and he was really good. He pitched into the 7th. He went 6 2/3, allowed only 6 hits, 2 runs, struck out 9 LSU batters for a team that doesn't strike out much. Brady Feigl was really good, but Mikhail Hilliard was spectacular. He outpitched Brady Feigl. 7 innings pitched, just 4 hits, 1 run, 6 strikeouts, 3 walks. When LSU absolutely had to have Hilliard pitch his best game of his career, he did. And major kudos to Hunter Fiducia, who came away with 3 RBI and a 2-for-4 night. Clutch hit by Fiducia, clutch hit by Watson, and a clutch hit by Hal Hughes to come up with RBIs when LSU desperately needed them to give themselves some separation in that ball game. So LSU ends up winning 5-2. Great defensive play, by the way. I don't know if it was on SportsCenter Top 10, but Zach Watson in the 9th made a diving catch in left center, and it absolutely should have been a top 10 play if it wasn't. The other thing that's interesting is that Paul Maneri elected to go to Nick Bush out of the bullpen. And this is something we talked about yesterday, because when it was a 3-3 ball game in Game 1, he elected to go to John Kodros, and it blew up on him. And our point yesterday was, hey, look, that's the downside of having Nick Bush as a starter, you don't have that reliable lefty out of the bullpen. Well, Maneri elected, hey, look, we're going to go take our best arm and go win this ball game and then worry about Sunday when it or game 3 when it gets there. So Bush threw 2 innings. I don't see a pitch count here for Bush yesterday. My apologies for that, but he threw 2 innings. He faced 8 batters. He only allowed 1 hit and a run. It was a homer. But nonetheless, he preserved the win, and LSU got it. So that means Paul Maneri needed a new starter today, and your options were Caleb Gilbert or Todd Peterson. And he's going to go Peterson. So I love that move, the fact that he's going to start Todd Peterson as Todd Peterson. As we've said so many times, Peterson, when you throw 95, 96, you've got to get something of significance out of that guy. And although he started the season in the Game 3 role and struggled in that role, since then it really seems to have ignited him, and Peterson's been great since then. So I am very interested to see if Peterson can go out today against James McArthur from Ole Miss and outpitch him. If Peterson can give LSU what he's given them in relief, if he can go 5 innings, just get through 5 and with your team having a chance to win, that's massive. So let's see how LSU does today with a chance to win the series. But today feels like gravy for LSU because you did what you needed to do, which was avoid the sweep, get 1, earn a top 10 win on the road, keep yourself in position to potentially be a regional host. Just a massive game today. A massive win yesterday, which sets up a very interesting scenario for LSU. With a win, they could draw back even with Ole Miss as well in the standings. So a lot to watch today with the NFL draft, rounds 4 through 7. Going to keep our eyes on a handful of LSU guys that may well hear their name called. And then also, of course, we'll be watching the LSU baseball game against Ole Miss today. So be sure to watch for Morning Scone tomorrow as we will recap all of it. And if you have not done so yet, please hit the red subscribe button. If you don't see it on this page, tap my name, the hyperlink, which will bring you to the Matt Moscona YouTube page. And there on that channel, you can hit the red subscribe button. So have a great Saturday, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.